Hello and welcome to live coverage of race number 7 of 8 of season 12 of the All Assist Soft League. It's the turn of Australia to play host to the penultimate race of the season, where there's a chance that plenty of permutations could come into place, including a new Constructors' Champion and a new Drivers' Champion, all could be placed within the next couple of hours. We have an 18-minute qualifying session to bring you here in the land down under, followed by a 50% race on the way. We're just going to jump on board with a couple of the drivers now that are out on track. We'll start with the defending champion in the Mercedes. It is Danger David. Throughout the course of the next couple of hours, we'll let you know the permutations and the impact of plenty of these changes that we'll see throughout qualifying, but of course throughout the course of the race as well. Flying solo for the almost final time, it is the turn of Australia. On board with Danger David in the Mercedes. After a 1-week hiatus, Herman makes his return. He's the current leader of the Drivers' Championship. He is currently sat in 14th place on an outlap himself. He is also in the Mercedes. 2 weeks ago, these two raced alongside each other. Di Perez came back last week and was phenomenal once again. But it is time for the top two in the championship to be battling head to head with the same team. Let's just have a look quickly at the permutations that are on at the moment and see just how much of an effect these results could have. So, as it stands at the moment for the Drivers' Championship, if Herman is to outscore Danger David by 23 points, this is taking into account the qualifying points and the race points that you can get here on the All Assist Soft League. If he outscores him by 23 points, Herman will be the champion by close of play this evening. If Herman is to finish first and Danger David finishes second, regardless of who takes pole and who takes the fastest lap, in 2 weeks' time at the race in Japan, we will have not only the season-ending race, but also the title-determining race for the Drivers' Championship. For the Constructors' Championship, it's slightly different. If the Mercedes outscore the AlphaTauris by 50 points today, the Mercedes will be the new champions of the Constructors' Championship, but Danger David, and I think it'd go to Di Perez, I'm assuming it'd go to Di Perez as well, will regain their title. They were with Red Bull last season when they won the Constructors' Championship. They're with Mercedes this season. We are on board with Danger David at the moment. I think the first one that will cross the line, though, will be Toxic CZ10. We'll jump on board with the full track map down the bottom right, just so we can get an idea of where a lot of these cars are. We're on board with the Alfa Romeo now, making his way into the final corners and onto the pit straight. DRS opened nice and early. 2 DRS zones here in Australia. I think it's actually 3 DRS zones here in Australia. And it's 1:19.3 is the time set by Toxic CZ10 as he continues his way around. Frankie 1811, it's a 1:18.5 in the AlphaTauri, as we just mentioned how close it's going to be for them. Danger David has gone back into the pit, so we will jump on board with one of the drivers that's next round. We're on board with VSM Salmon at the moment in the McLaren, not competing for the championship this season, primarily due to the fact he hasn't been consistently racing. There's a time there by Surabo at 1:21.7. At the top you can see Herman taking a 1:18.4. He goes on provisional pole. Quincy in the Red Bull is a 1:19.9. He told us last week in the post-race interviews that he's looking forward to getting back in the Mercedes next season. Little spoiler alert for you there. It looks like the Red Bulls and the Mercedes are going to be swapping teams back over again. We saw that at the end of last season, heading into this season, of course. On board with VSM Sandman in the McLaren, heading round into the long right-hand corner onto the pit straight, where DRS can be opened almost immediately onto the straight, and he does that as well. He sets a time of 1 minute 18.2. He's 2/10 quicker than the Mercedes of Herman. Still plenty of racing to be going. We are only 5 minutes into this 18-minute qualifying session. There's no eliminations. It is as soon as that 18 minutes expires, you can finish those laps, and as soon as you're done, you are done for the case of qualifying. We're on board now with the AlphaTauri of Truckster. His teammate Frankie 1811 is up in third place at the moment. Truckster's making his way around this track, opens up DRS for that little straight there, heading in towards the final corners of Sector 2, moving on to Sector 3. We'll let you know the time that he gets if you look up to the top right. As soon as he crosses the line into the pit straight, it will let you know Nice little left-hander, slows down ever so slightly and heads his way into the pits, so not happy with the time that he was setting. So let's jump on board with Formula 1 Farah. His time's actually been invalidated, so whatever he gets now will not count. So let's go on board with RS0121. He's in the Red Bull at the moment. He was also in a Mercedes previously. So just looking at the time that he's got to try and beat, a 1:18.2 to take provisional pole away from VSM Sandman. There's a good distance of 6 seconds between Sandman and 10th place Racing Wheel, who of course is the slowest driver to have set a time, or was the slowest driver to have set a time. Veriduco now holds that on 1:24.082. Racing Wheel jumping up to 9th place with a 1:21.7, making his way through Sector 3, takes a bit of a spin there, not even catching the chicane, but takes a bit of a spin. That's going to cost him a couple of seconds and could prove costly when he goes to pass the line. If he chooses to stay out, he's staying out, so he might even have another go. Nope, last minute decision to go into the pits. So he's gone into the pits, so let's jump on board with the Alpine of Tarquingino. We'll actually ignore that and try and find Formula 1 Farah instead. Formula 1 Farah now on a timed lap. His first time was invalidated. Tarquingino's time has been invalidated, which is now why we're on board with the Williams, down in 17th place at the moment. A fantastic purple sector through Sector 1. So if he can upset the rhythm that the front drivers have set, that's normally Sandman, Herman, Danger David, the three that are known for the last couple of seasons here on the All Assist Soft League, fighting towards the front of the grid. Right now, Formula 1 Forest goes purple in Sector 1. He's just gone purple in Sector 2 as well. If he can keep this rhythm and this momentum through Sector 3 whilst he's got the DRS open at the moment, and he can beat that 1:18.2, he's on course for upsetting a couple of drivers at the front of this grid. 1:18.2 is the time to beat in a Williams. Formula 1 Farah taking these corners like he's practiced before and before, stays out on track and rightly so, takes this final corner onto the pit straight, DRS open immediately, stays onto the left hand side, 1:18.2 to beat, he gets a 1:18.9, 7/10 slower than Sandman despite a purple Sector 1 and a purple Sector 2, which tells you all you need to know about just how much he struggled through that third and final sector. He only gets himself into 6th place, not much actually separates the top 6 drivers, less than a second will separate them. No margin for error for any of these drivers throughout the course of this qualifying session. We are on board with Danger David. His teammate currently sits in 2nd place. He's on an out lap. He's on a timed lap, should I say, at the moment, but it looks like he might have just been slowed down ever so slightly. He certainly has been slowed down there, and he slows down himself. I think he's heading into the pits. There was a bit of traffic heading round onto the pit straight. Looked like he could be setting a very good time to get him into the top 6 at the very least, but he's had to abort that and go into the pits due to a bit of traffic just in front of him. Let's go on board with Tarquingino. I mentioned a little earlier that he was on a red timed lap for his first timed lap. That means that it was invalidated. He's currently sat in 14th place in the Alpine. He's out on a timed lap now. This one hasn't been invalidated, touch wood, as of yet. 1:18.2 is still the time to beat to get himself onto provisional pole. He goes round onto the pit straight, just avoids the chicane, opens DRS immediately as well, hits a 1:19.8. That's good enough for 8th place for him. So let's jump on board with the Alfa Romeo of Tibran. He's just gone round the first couple of corners. We'll actually move a little bit further around the track to where we've got, making his debut, RPM Sinful. That's actually a little bit further behind where I've just seen Tibran, but we'll jump on board with him for the moment. Making his debut, he's in the Williams, he's teaming up with Formula 1 Farah, who's had a last couple of good weeks as well. RPM Sinful has just gone invalidated on his timed lap as well, so he might slow down things ever so slightly or gain a bit more momentum going round onto the pit straight. So we'll go on board with Truckster, who's just finishing his timed lap in the AlphaTauri. 1:18.2 is the time to beat. Goes round onto the pit straight. He's got an Aston Martin just in front of him. He does hit the time of 1:19.2. That's good enough for 7th place for him. So let's move back further down. I think Tibran should be close to finishing his. He is. He's coming round onto the pit straight now in the Alfa Romeo. Currently in 16th place. 1:18.2. Still the time to beat. He gets a 1:19.2. A full second slower than VSM Sandman. That puts him into 8th place, putting Tibran and Toxic, the two Alfa Romeos, together on the same row of the grid. Let's move down to RS0121. He had some struggles on his first time lap. He's currently racing around in 17th place at the moment, just finishes Sector 2. No purple sector for him, but he's still got a chance to break himself into the top 10. Still a second separates first from 6th place, but some of these drivers are now back out there on either out laps or time laps. We will keep an eye on the likes of Ivor, Pleasant Snake, VSM Sandman, Herman, I'm just going to go out there and say, do not write off the McLaren team of VSM Sandman and Pleasant Snake. That is a fantasy team if I've ever seen one. On to the way to pit straight now. We're on board still with RSO 121. He's going to set a time of 1:18.3. Moves the Red Bull up into third place. His teammate Quincy down in 8th at the moment. He's out on a time lap also. We have no drivers that haven't yet set a time. Out on time lap, Peter Caspi, DDB 890, Skid Solo and RPM Sinful all in the pits at the moment. Danger David not yet set a time for the Mercedes. He's out on an out lap as we speak. So let's move towards the front side of the grid and we'll go with the current championship leader. In fact, he's only just started his time lap, so we'll move away from him and come back to him hopefully just before he does finish that time lap. Let's have a look at where Frankie 1811 is at the moment, making his way through Sector 2, opening up DRS in the second DRS zone. And that closes at the right time as well. Of course, all assists off means that they have to do all of this manually. He goes back into another DRS zone according to the bottom of the screen. He's got a Williams moving to the side for him to allow him to make his way through, but there's a yellow flag that does come up because of how slow the Williams has been forced to go. Frankie 1811 only needs to find 500ths of a second if he's to jump above the McLaren of VSM Sandman, but the other drivers in and amongst them as well, Evo 32, Herman, Pleasant Snake, they're all out there at the moment as well as Frankie 1811 opts to pit. There's still 6.5 minutes. He's got a chance to come back out if he wants to. RSO 121 goes into the pits there. Let's have a look on board with Herman, who gets the time of 1:17.7, 5/10ths quicker than VSM Sandman, puts him on provisional pole for 6 minutes left to go for a number of drivers to try and take that position away from him. We're on board with Formula 1 Power. In fact, let's move away to Herman's teammate, Danger David, purple through Sector 2. We didn't get to see what he got through Sector 1, but we know it's purple in Sector 2, making his way through around about the three-quarter stage of this track, one of the few tracks that does have an even sort of distance between the first, second and third sector. We are staying on board with Danger David, although he did have a little slight niggle at the back end of his car just then. Not enough time to really head back in and make any changes. Goes down onto the pit straight, nearly catches the wall. Stays fully on the track, though, with his right tyres. He's got to be a 1:17.7. He gets a 1:17.9. A margin between him and his teammate Herman, who sat on the front row of the grid together in the McLarens. Let's go back on board with Formula 1 Farah, who takes a bit of a spin as well. The same position that Danger David caught the back end of his car ever so slightly, and that could have been the difference between first and second place at the end of this qualifying session. We are now entering into the final 5 minutes on board with Formula 1 Power, making his way round onto the pit straight, opens the DRS, 1:17.7 to be, gets a 1:18.1. That's gone ahead of VSM Salmon and puts the Williams on the second row of the grid in third place. Let's jump on board with the Alfa Romeo of Toxic CZ10, making his way around the track at the moment in Sector 3, going to enter into the DRS detection zone of Sector 3. It's just a couple of corners before the pit straight itself. Takes the left corner very nicely on the inside, back onto the outside, splits across to the inside, ready for the pit straight. Avoids the wall, catches the chicane slightly, but that's nothing to worry about. 1:17.7 the time to beat. He beats his best by 8/10ths. That's only good enough for 8th, though, with him getting a 1:18.4. So we'll jump on board now with the Ferrari of DDB 890. He's making his way around the track at the moment. He's on a time lap, hasn't set a timed lap yet this afternoon. We're waiting for Peter Caspi, Skid Solar and RPM Sinful at the minute, all in the pits. None of them have set a time. They're cutting it very close. There's only 4 minutes left. They're treating this as a one-shot qualifying session almost. 4 minutes left to go, and as it stands, it is Herman on pole position, Danger David in second place, the Mercedes, the current championship leader, the current defending champion, the current defending constructors champion, on the front row of the grid. If things finish like this as well, it does mean that the title conclusion will come in Japan next weekend, throughout the course of the next hour or so, while we do have a 50% lapped race for you here in Australia this afternoon. We will be keeping you up to date with the permutations and the impact of these drivers as well. On board with DDB 890, he hasn't got time to pit, so he continues his way around onto the pit straight. Any time is a good time at the moment for a driver with no time. 1:17 to beat. To get top place, gets a 1:21.6. It does put him at the pack of the pack for the drivers that have been out and set a time, as we see at the bottom of the screen. Quincy has retired from the session. Truckster has done the exact same. It looks like it's just a simple situation if they're not going to beat their times, but now we see RPM Sinful has also retired from the session. If we have a look at the bottom, he hasn't been out there on set a time yet either. And as it stands at the moment, with just a couple of minutes left, there is still plenty going on. On board with T-Brand making his way round on a time lap. Let's jump across to Tarkangino going through Sector 3. Remember, once the time expires, the 2.5 minutes that's left, once that time expires, the drivers still have an opportunity to finish their laps they're on, but they cannot then start a new lap. So Peter Caspi about to cross on the pit straight. He's about to start his first time lap. We're on board with Tarkangino. 118.9 is his best. He's just about to set a 135. 135.1 is the time that he's set, which of course is much slower than the one before, so he might just be getting an extra couple of laps in on practice here in Australia. Wow, what an entertaining last couple of minutes that has been. So let's, Formula 1 Fire is probably heading into the pits now on 4th place as it stands. VSM Sandman, in all that excitement, we did miss it at 117.9. That's good enough to put him in 2nd place and separate the two Mercedes. We've seen plenty of headaches, plenty of upsets going on between Herman, VSM Sandman and Danger David. Some of the best racing at the front from those three drivers. Let's not forget some of the drivers that are currently lower down the grid that we've also seen racing at the front over the last couple of weeks. Racing Wheel, Ivor, Pleasant Snake, we know that they can race towards the front. We've seen Suribo, T-Brand. This is a very competitive league with drivers up and down the grid performing on a regular basis. At the moment, it is Herman out on an outlap. Danger David is now out on an outlap as well, which means this last 1 minute 16 is going to be entertaining. We are currently on board with T-Brand. In fact, T-Brand's just gone into the pit, so we'll ignore that. We'll go on board with Tarkangino, making his way around in the Alpine at the moment through Sector 2 into Sector 3. As we speak, there's nothing to worry about with regards to him upsetting the 117.7 time. He seems to have slowed down ever so slightly, perhaps to prepare himself for that final stint, that final opportunity once he's passed the pit straight. So we'll have a look at who's next likely to finish. We'll go on board with the Haas of Berraduco, who's been held up slightly by a Ferrari. The speed has now just picked up from the Ferrari ahead of him. I think that is DDB890. But Verdugo appears to have slowed down into 4th gear. He's going into the corner, so you expect the gears to have shifted ever so slightly anyway, but it looks like he might have slowed down before going onto the pit straight, knowing that he's not beating his best time over 119.9. But with 23 seconds left on the clock, he can pass the stop-start-go line, and that means he's got one last crack to get as high up this grid as possible. Skid Solo in the Aston Martin will start in 19th place. RPM Sinful will start in 20th place. Neither of those two drivers have been out there and set a time throughout the course of this 18-minute qualifying session. As we enter the final couple of seconds, I can now tell you that time has expired, which means whatever time you finish with now is the time that you're going to have going into the qualifying session. If you can beat your time, that's great. If you can't, you're starting from at best the position you're in at the moment, which for Formula 1 Fara is 4th place, for Quincy is 12th, for Truckster is 13th, and for RPM Simple is 20th, as all of those have left this qualifying session. We are on board with the current leader, that is Herman, 117.4. He betters his time, so we'll go on board with Danger David making his way into Sector 3 at the moment. A 117.4 is the time to beat. He needs to find 5/10 to get ahead of Herman. He needs to find himself 100th of a second to get ahead of VSM Sandman. He's slowed down, he's done. 3rd place is the best that Danger David's going to see in the Mercedes. So let's jump on board with Toxic down in 9th place at the moment. He's not going to beat his best time either. We'll see what Verdugo's doing. His time's been invalidated, so he's not going to beat his best time either. So we'll go on board with Suribo, who does have a chance to beat the 121.2 that he set, that sees the Haas down in 17th place. He's gone up and into the grass, and that's going to prove costly and maybe wave away his chances. Yes, the time, the lap, it's invalidated, which means everybody is done. The time has expired. It is Herman on the front row of the grid in pole position. VSM Sandman in the McLaren in 2nd place, separating the two Mercedes as Danger David goes into 3rd place in the Mercedes. Formula 1 Fara in 4th place in the Williams, Frankie 1811 in 5th, RSO 121 in 6th, Pleasant Snake 7th, Ivor 8th, Toxic 9th, and the Alfa Romeo of T-Brand will make your top 10. We've got Tarkangino 11th, Quincy 12th, Truckster 13th, Verdugo 14th, and as you saw just on there, 50% lap race on the way in just a few moments' time. Welcome back to race 7. There's no formation lap, which means it is lights out. And here we go. The penultimate race of Season 12 of the All Assist Soft League is underway and going up into the first corner. Sandman takes the inside line on Herman and takes the position away from him, putting the McLaren in first place with still some defending left to do. He's got Formula 1 Farah and Danger David just behind him as the Williams makes his way up into third place on a very quick start. But at the moment, going into turn 3 and 4, VSM Sandman is the leader of the Australian Grand Prix. Behind him is Herman. Danger David, as you can see in the backfield, they're having a bit of a battle with Formula 1 Farah as Evo and T-Brand take penalties for multiple warnings of corner cuttings. That could be costly at the end, as it's currently Mercedes in second and third place. This will not be enough at the moment to give them the Constructors' Championship heading into Japan. We'll talk more about the permutations over the course of the next 29 laps as the penultimate race is underway here as Herman goes up onto the inside, tries to take the inside line. I think he cuts a bit of a corner, but he forces Sandman wide. Going into the next couple of corners, McLaren and Mercedes fighting neck and neck again. Going into the second to last corners here in Australia, Sandman keeps that position, but it is very, very close between the two. What we just saw a moment ago with the assistance of DRS would have been absolutely phenomenal. But at the moment, going round onto the pit straight is a bit more defending for Sandman to do. We know the pace that Herman can get going round onto the pit straight. Sandman is going to finish lap number 1 as your race leader, but half a second separates him from the current championship leader of Herman going into turn number 1. There's still a nice little bit of a gap, but 2 tenths has been gained by Herman as it's slow in and quick out for the Mercedes to close that gap on VSM Sandman, who's missed a couple of races this season, and maybe one of the reasons why he's not towards the front battling with Herman and with Danger David. But we could be looking at 3 years and 3 different champions after 3 consecutive years of Sandman domination here in the All Assist Soft League. Sandman, of course, and Herman setting a purple Sector 1 going through the next couple of corners. 5 tenths is still the difference between the two, and whilst that seems to be close, we'll jump on board with the McLaren of Pleasant Snake, who's got a bit of attacking to do himself. He is just behind Frankie 1811. He could actually do the Mercedes a bit of a favour if he can get ahead of the AlphaTauri, who's being held up at the moment by Formula 1 Farah. We'll jump back on board with them in a moment, but we'll go on board with Herman, who's closed that gap ever so slightly with Sandman. Goes up onto the inside line, going into the next corner. It's very, very close between the two drivers, but Sandman manages to keep position with 2 tenths now the difference going into the final couple of corners onto the pit straight. This is going to be an incredible race between the two drivers when DRS becomes available in the next couple of laps. So you can see both drivers out on the medium tyres at the moment. We didn't start this at the very beginning because we wanted to make sure that we could see everything that was going on, but at the front the majority of these drivers are on medium tyres as Sandman sets a new fastest lap of the race, 121.5. 5 tenths separates him and Herman at the moment. So let's jump a bit further down the grid for Pleasant Snake. Once again, one of the closest actually. We'll go further down to try and keep an eye on the overtake of RS0121. Has a look on the inside there of Veriduco. Chooses not to go for it. A bit of a risky lunge if you ask me, if he was to go for it in the Red Bull. As we continue through the race of Australia, let's go on board with T-Brand, who from out of nowhere got the overtake done on DDB890, but comfortably holds that position ahead of him at the moment, looking for where the next closest is on track. It's very close between a lot of these, but not close enough for overtaking at the moment. I think it is going to be Pleasant Snake once again, who's still got that gap on Frankie 1811. You'd like to think that if he can make the benefit of this DRS, he can also get past Formula 1 Farah. We watch there as Frankie 1811 does get past Formula 1 Farah with the assistance of DRS, but then takes a bit of a spin and goes into the wall. Not sure just how bad that damage is or if it means he's retiring from the race, but he's falling down the grid. He's put himself in reverse rate to come out of it. We'll just see a lot of these drivers get past him at the moment, but Formula 1 Farah with a very close overtake between him and Frankie 1811, who took the opportunity in the AlphaTauri. Yeah, we can just see there Formula 1 Farah has been disqualified now for being parked in a dangerous location. That is extremely harsh from the game, considering the fact that he was having to park there, because if he drove out and reversed out, he was hitting other drivers. That is harsh from the game, but Formula 1 Farah, despite a very strong start in this race, is out of the Australian Grand Prix, and we are on a virtual safety car after seeing no safety cars at all last week, not virtual or an actual safety car out on track in Silverstone. We got a very nice race and very entertaining race between about 4 or 5 drivers for the best part of the start of it. Right now, It is Herman out in the lead under this VSC, so all drivers have had to just slow things down ever so slightly. It's allowed me to regain a little bit of composure as we've got Frankie 1811 now up into 4th place and Pleasant Snake down into 5th. So under the VSC, 6/10 separates Herman in the lead now from VSM Sandman. Because whilst there was an incident where Formula 1 Farah was pushed into the side, we missed the overtake at the front, and I can only apologise for that. But DRS must have had some assistance there. We'll move further down onto Pleasant Snake. In fact, VSM Sandman's getting close once again as we've now got a couple of drive-through penalties on their way after speeding under the VSC. One of those goes to Peter Caspi, but we are now on board with VSM Sandman, who has got DRS on Herman, and he's not got enough track, though, to get past him on this occasion. Stays just behind him, taking across onto the inside. Excellent view from this of him following Herman around this track. 5/10 still separates the two, which means heading round onto the pit straight, he will have DRS once again. That opens up the back wing. That gives him an extra 10 miles per hour advantage over the car just in front, but it's all about how you take these corners and how you approach these corners as well. As Herman doesn't seem to lose any time there on VSM Sandman on that straight, as into a very quick second DRS zone. If anything, on those couple of corners there, Herman gained a tenth of a second, but VSM Sandman closes that back down to just half a second between the two drivers once again. So DRS helped him keep that gap close, but there's a long way between now and the end of the race. Another 25 laps to go. We're on lap 5 of 29 here in Australia in the All Assist Soft League. Let's jump on board with Evo. In fact, Frankie 1811's now come off and gone into the Warners. He's tried to get himself back on track. Trugster's gone round, but nearly ended up colliding with his teammate. But it is Frankie 1811 in 8th place at the moment, and anywhere Pleasant Snake seems to be getting, the pressure that he's putting on, a lot of these drivers have been forced into errors there, and as a result, spinning off and away from it. So Pleasant Snake currently in 4th place, 3.1 seconds, separates him from Danger David. So the next closest is Frankie 1811, who's just behind Trugster with a chance to try and gain some of these positions back. He's obviously lost a lot of grip on his tyres. He also, from that incident, lost a front wing, so we expect him to be going into the pits any time now, but he is just behind his teammate of Trugster. It's weird because this just shown 1 moment ago, no wing, and there we go. You can see it again, very close there for Frankie 1811 in the Alpha Tauri. They need to get a very strong finish, because if there's a 50-point difference between them and the Mercedes at the end of this race, the Constructors' Championship will go to the Mercedes that, as of today, is with Herman and with Danger David, as we do have another VSC out. And with 6 laps gone, or on the 6th lap, should I say, 0.8 seconds, separates Herman from VSM Sandman as Frankie 1811 and Peter Caspi go into the pits. Peter Caspi, who's gone in to try and serve his time penalty, and he's been given a time penalty for speeding in the pit lane as well. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't at the moment for Peter Caspi. 4/10 separates Herman and VSM Sandman. The VSC really helped the McLaren close down on the Mercedes, but it is not over yet. 6/10 separates the McLaren from the Mercedes at the moment, making their way into Sector 2 in Australia. And I think there are drivers elsewhere that are quite close at the moment, so we'll jump on board with RS0121 in the Red Bull, just in time for him to get that overtake done on Veriduco, and he made that look basic, as DB890 has now been disqualified for blocking the pit lane. So 6 laps in, 2 disqualifications. Plenty of racing still left to go, as it looks like RS0121 caught the back end of his car ever so slightly there. Let's go on board with Toxic, who's very close to Evo, and as I say that, he just falls out of DRS. So we'll go on board with RPM Sinful, who started this race at the back of the grid. He's now up into 13th place in the Williams, putting the pressure on RS0121. Opens up DRS round this corner as well, goes up onto the inside and comfortably takes the position away from the Red Bull with a couple of extra corners before another DRS zone. This time it is going to remain with RPM Sinful, simply because he was behind RS0121 when the DRS detection zone became apparent for him. So that is RPM Sinful up into 12th place, another position gained for him. So let's go on board with VSM Sandman. He is still close to Herman. He is hot on the tail of the current championship leader. Very, very close between the two at the moment. And just as I say that, commentators curse as you will, he falls out of the 1 second mark despite having DRS at his aid, and he should still have DRS going into the next couple of corners as well. He does have it in DRS 3, opens it up once again, and that gap is brought back down by around 0.3 of a second as he gets ever closer to Herman. It could all be reliant on the strategies, though, of the McLarens to see just how close they can get. This looks like if it's going to be Sandman and Pleasant Snake against Herman and Danger David, we have got one hell of a Season 13 lined up for you. But as it stands, 2 of the top 4 are not currently with a team. As DRS is opened once again for Sandman onto the pit straight, we are getting very close to the first lapped car here on track, and he's only 8 laps into the race as DRS remains with VSM Sandman into Sector 2. Skid Solo, as you see at the top, takes a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane as he makes his way in, but 0.6 still separates the front 2 drivers. Let's go on board with Veriduco. He's just behind RS0121, who seems to be making his way backwards. 1.5 seconds separates him from the Williams of RPM Sinful. This time, last lap, Sinful was just getting past the Red Bull as well. But here's Veriduco, 1/10 of a second behind, as we've just seen the retirement of Skid Solo. Making his way through is Veriduco. He's going to have DRS going round onto the pit straight. Can he get position on RS0121? He's going to open DRS. He has done. He's just behind the driver at the moment. I don't think there's going to be enough track for him to be able to take a lunge up the inside. He stays behind him for now, but that gap is still extremely close, and we're going to jump on board now with the race leader, which is VSM Sandman and Herman. The battle for first place at the moment. That's very close, and Herman takes a big spin. He manages to keep track just before he loses it and goes into the wall, and VSM Sandman very close to him, narrowly avoids a collision between the 2 drivers. Very, very close between the 2 of them, and VSM Sandman continues pushing on to Herman, but that slight mistake from Herman, he got away with it. It's closed the gap ever so slightly for Danger David, but it's still 4 seconds between him and VSM Sandman, who opens up DRS on Herman onto the first corner, taken very nicely by both drivers. The distance still remains the same, but DRS is opened into Sector 2. As VSM Sandman now forced to nearly half a second behind his competitor, and we'll see if we can jump on board with them before the end of this lap again, as we'll go back on board now with Evil, who's battling with Pleasant Snake, who locks up going into that corner, nearly collides with Evil, but has to give the position away, but still remains on the outside. Very close between the 2 drivers going into the next corner, where he's going to have the inside line. Looked very close from Evil there, but no collision as far as I could see between the Aston Martin and the McLaren, and Evil walks away in 4th place. Pleasant Snake moves down to 5th. That lock-up of the tyres could prove very pivotal in this battle for a podium position. At one point, he was battling with Danger David for 3rd place. Now, he's going to be battling with Evil and maybe even Trugster for 5th place. It's very, very close between these drivers at the moment at the front. So we'll see where RPM Sinful's gained another position. We got there just a little bit too late. He got past Frankie 1811. He moves up into 11th place at the moment with the Williams. So let's see where the next closest battle is for us, and it is going to be Pleasant Snake, who spun off track, so it's getting from bad to worse for him at the moment. He's managed to get back on track, picked up a little bit of gravel on his way through as well. He's just lost another position to T-Bran, and he's now battling to defend against Quincy, who's down in 9th place. Might actually have this position for him as Herman. We saw him spin off ever so slightly earlier. He's now taken a 3-second time penalty. Is the pressure of this championship battle getting to the Mercedes leader and the leader of the Constructors' Championship, as now, as it stands, it will be VSM Sandman who takes 1st place, but all he has to do is remain inside of 3 seconds of Herman, who is out in front at the moment. Let's go on board with Pleasant Snake, see if we can stay on board with him, as there's a 3-way battle at the moment for 7th place. Quincy goes up on the inside, as you see there, to get the position away from T-Bran. Another lock-up from Pleasant Snake allows T-Bran to hold on to 8th place, but Quincy goes out in 7th and starts to push on, as now T-Bran has to defend from Pleasant Snake. Following the way round, as we see Quincy go off into the wall. Only a bit of damage to the back of his car. He should be able to continue, but you saw Toxic and Pleasant Snake quick to avert that danger and continue, as Frankie 1811 now retires from the session. He's in 15th place. He'll fall down to 17th as his DNF position. We're on board with Pleasant Snake, who's very close at the moment, or was very close, should I say, at the moment, between T-Bran and Quincy, but he's gained a bit of a position away from there. Now, the closest we've got is down in 11th place with RPM Simple. We are 10 laps into this race. We've had 4 retirements so far. And Quincy, who did superbly well to get up into 7th place, went backwards into the wall. If that's the forward side of your car, you're out of the race. but it's the back, and with a bit of damage, he may well see through this the rest of this race. Let's go on board with VSM Sandman then. 2/10 separates him from Herman. He keeps on getting close. He's flirting with the chance to take first place away from the Mercedes driver, but nothing at the moment. Following through in Sector 1, he will have DRS available to him at the next DRS zone, which is coming up in a couple of corners time, and it's a quick DRS followed by a very quick DRS shortly after as Quincy gets past Tibran, who heads into the pits. Tibran may have caught a bit of grain on going off track to avoid the collision with Quincy that could very well have happened. We are coming up towards the halfway point of this race. Opens up DRS again, does VSM Sandman. 3/10 separates him from Herman, going through into another quick DRS zone that becomes available for him almost immediately. 4/10 now separates. He closes up the gap, just tries. He has a little bit of a look up the inside, decides not to go with it, and stays behind Herman. As it stands, those 3 seconds that Herman got as a time penalty will work in favour of VSM Sandman, who will take first place away from Herman. Now, that's 4/10 between the two, and that is almost the closest we've got. It's very close between that one and the challenge between Peter Caspi and Tibran. So we'll jump on board with the Ferrari at the moment as Peter Caspi's making his way around. 6/10 separates them. Everywhere else, you've got quite a bit of a distance between some of these drivers. So let's just quickly have a look at the stops that some of these drivers have had. We've only had 3 cars out on track at the moment that have had pit stops. So the strategies will have to come into play very soon. The majority of the grid are on medium or hard tyres. So we've got another couple of laps before all this strategy and pit stops start coming into effect. Let's jump on board with Toxic in 6th place at the moment in the Alfa Romeo. He's closing that gap on Trugster. You can see just a little bit further ahead of him is another car ready for a lap. Ivor is 9 seconds, nearly 10 seconds away from 5th place. And it looks like, despite them being the closest to each other that we've got on track at the moment, Toxic is still not able to put forward a challenge to get that position off of Trugster in the battle for 5th place. Maybe this DRS will help him in doing so. 4/10 separates him, going up into what is a very long corner, followed by a quick left-right, where you've got to absolutely nail these corners, because if you don't, you can go spinning all which ways and into the wall. That's coming up in just a couple of corners time. But at the moment, they've moved to the one side of the racing wheel, I think it is, of the Alpine of racing wheel. And that gap is close to 2/10 between Toxic and Trugster. It's not over yet. There is another DRS coming up in a moment. Going on to the pit straight. Long right-hander DRS is available to Toxic. Let's see if he can capitalise on this. A relatively long pit straight as well for him to have that opportunity. Just behind the AlphaTauri. He's not going to have enough track to do it on this occasion. Or is he? He was looking at the idea of maybe going up the inside, decides not to do it, and stays just behind Trugster in 6th place at the moment. But he's got DRS immediately after again. This time he's going to go up onto the inside. Times the overtake to perfection. Takes the position back, but he's not done yet. As Trugster this time, he almost locks wheels. Trugster goes up onto the inside and loses the position. It looked very close. I don't think there was any collision between the two drivers. Excellent racing. It looked very close, but they managed to avoid it. Toxic walks away in 5th place. Trugster falls down to 6th at the moment. We see T-Brand just below us getting the position on RS0121, who's fallen down into 10th place. We just missed that overtake, but when cars are that close, you're going to get that sometimes. Trugster still with a bit of a battle going on at the moment with Toxic. He goes up onto the outside. A long corner here as well. Holds the outside line, switches onto the inside with an excellent overtake on Toxic to take 5th place back from the Alfa Romeo. But that battle still isn't over. He does have DRS because of how close these DRS zones are. If you're that close behind a driver for DRS 1, you'll get it through DRS 2 as well, just because of how proximity the two DRS zones are to each other. Going around onto the pit straight, it will be Toxic this time that does have DRS, as it was exactly this time 1 lap ago. So we'll see if he can get that position back. Opens up the overtake. It's showing that he hasn't been given. He has been given DRS, should I say so. I was on board with Trugster for a moment. Going into turn 1, Toxic will hold on to DRS going into turns 3 and 4. See if he can get the overtake in the same position as he did last time. I don't think he's going to have that same sort of opportunity on this occasion, though, and he's this time made to stay in 6th place. Still, these two drivers are the closest we've got on track, which is 4/10 between the two of them. No other stops have been made since we mentioned it. Peter Caspi, Veriduco, Racing Wheel and T-Brand are your 4 that have already made a stop that's still out on track at the moment, as Racing Wheel takes a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. 6/10 now separates the two, so we'll jump on board with BSM Sandman, who is the closest to an overtake at the moment, but he's been playing with the opportunity to get past Herman quite dangerously, just not taking that plunge just yet. I don't know if that's the strategy that's playing in his mind, or knowing that he doesn't actually need to, as long as he remains within 3 seconds of Herman. He will take first place come the end of this race. DRS is open and available for him. He stays onto the inside line, though. He has a peek at going up onto the inside for the corner, but he stays on the left-hand side and behind the current race leader. DRS is going to be available to him again now, though. If this opportunity presents itself, you've got to think the McLaren is going to have to take it and see just how far away from Herman he can make his car. Medium tyres for both of these drivers. We're getting towards the end of the lifespan of those tyres. I expect it very soon for those to be pitting. We have had a pit from Evo, which means Toxic's moved up into 4th place and Truckster's 5th, as there's a battle going on at the moment, which is for now for 4th place. Evo's dropped down to 6th place as a result of him pitting. The DRS at the moment is in favour of Toxic, who is in 4th place. Truckster's just behind him, very close between the two. Excellent driving to not cause a collision there. Very, very close to the back end of Toxic was Truckster. As we go round through Sector 1, we're going to have another DRS available in a moment or two's time. 4 DRS zones throughout the course of this entire track. Tells you all you need to know about this track, doesn't it? And the plenty of overtaking opportunities that are available for these drivers. We'll jump on board quickly then with BSM Sandman, which normally means that I'm about to miss an overtake from either Truckster or Toxic, as them two keep on switching positions. It is going to be DRS available for BSM Sandman. He's still half a second between him and Herman. He is just behind Herman at the moment. Has a peek onto the inside, up into the corner, but again the track is not long enough for him, and he's had to sit just behind him again, as we do have a yellow flag out in Sector 1. It is something that these are coming up to in a couple of corners time, as down goes RS0121 and Quincy. It's Quincy that's moved to one side to allow a lot of these cars to go by. He's fallen down into 12th place at the moment, so let's jump on board. Peter Caspi there, taking the position away from RS0121, up into 10th place at the moment, but RS0121 is just behind him, and he's still within a battling distance, as RPM is there as well. Toxic is now going into the pits, means Pleasant Snake moves up into 6th place. Evo into 5th. T-Bran still sits in 8th place at the moment, but Toxic, who's been having a bit of a battle with Truckster, falls down into 7th place because of his pit stop. But some of those drivers ahead of him, including Truckster and Pleasant Snake, who's just ahead of him, all need to pit still. We're on board with Peter Caspi. We're going to move away from him, though, to VSM Sandman, as once again the top two in this battle for first place are still very close to each other. Almost less than a tenth separated the two of them for a moment there, as VSM Sandman was very close to that of Herman. On the way round onto the pit straight, lap 16 of 29, almost reaching an end, and we see the first pit stop, and that is Herman heading into the pits, which means VSM Sandman is out in first place at the moment. So when he goes into the pit, assumably at the end of this lap, we will have a look at just how close Herman is to getting past him, as Herman makes his way out of the pit stop now. And I think he's just going to maintain second place. He's not going to lose any further positions, but he might be caught up in a fair bit of traffic. Sandman, however, is a couple of corners ahead of him at the moment, and no traffic ahead of him, so Herman could have a bit of an issue there as Drugster goes into the pits. Danger David therefore moving up into 3rd place. He has had his pit stop, so is Evo just behind him, which means as it stands it's Sandman, Herman, Danger David, Evo, Truckster in 5th place. He'll keep that position on his way back out at the moment. He's followed out of there by Pleasant Snake. Toxic will just jump ahead of him again. I think Toxic has actually gained a bit of time on Truckster after those two were battling quite closely. Toxic's going to be a fair bit, 12 seconds behind Evo, but 2 seconds ahead of Truckster, so it's very close between the two of them, but not as close as it was prior to those pit stops happening. RPM Simple, excellent battle from him to get up from 20th into 10th place. He's going to go into the pits now. Suribo down in 15th place, gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings of corner cutting there. We're going to jump on board now with VSM Sandman, who is gone into the pits, so let's go on board with Herman. As Sandman goes into the pits, we'll see just how close Herman can get to taking first place back, and if he can gain, how much of he can gain, that 3-second deficit that he's going to have from that time penalty on VSM Sandman. Taking the final corner onto the pit straight at the moment. VSM Sandman leaves the pit box. He's going towards the pit exit at the moment. It looks like it's going to be neck and neck, but Herman is going to have the lead back from him as he goes purple through sector 3 as well. Neck and neck going into turn 1, and Herman takes the position back. Herman is back at the front of the grid now, over a second ahead of VSM Sandman. He knows if he can double that advantage, he is going to be first place, top step of the podium, come all said and done at the end of this race. But 1.3 seconds separates the two. Sandman out on soft tyres. Out on soft tyres also is Herman with 11 laps left to go. Danger David down in third place at the moment, out on hard tyres as it stands in the Mercedes. As it stands, I am under the impression that Herman will be the driver's champion come the end of this race. I may be wrong because the maths isn't my strong point, but at the same time the points are done differently based upon how you qualify and how the race finishes, and as far as I'm concerned I think it's very close, but I think Herman will take the Drivers' Championship away from Danger David, even more so now that he's fallen down into fourth place and Ivor moves up into third in the Aston Martin. Comfortably takes past him, who still will have DRS to help him defend against the Mercedes of Danger David going into the next couple of corners, as Quincy in 14th place retires from the session and falls down into 16th place, pushing of course Serbo and Racing Wheel up a little bit further. RPM Simple still in 10th place despite his pits, as we now get a second with a safety car. 5-second time penalty for Toxic after a collision with Quincy. We'll not be able to see just what's happened with Quincy's car at the moment, as it's been making its way back into the garage. But Ivor gets third place back from Danger David, who has pitted. I think he's going to change onto soft tyres. It seems like the play to make, he has gone onto soft tyres. He'll have about 8 to 9 laps left to go with that as well. But at the moment, he's in fourth place with an uphill battle ahead of him. We do have a safety car out, which will probably be out for a couple of laps, which means we'll have around about 8 or 9 laps left of racing, and it'll close the gap between Sandman and Herman once again. We are on board with Danger David. We'll get rid of the pit stops to the left-hand side, as we've seen enough of that at the moment. It was just there so we got an idea of how many pit stops people needed. And I'm trying to establish what has happened here. As it would appear, I'm not quite sure just what's happened in front of us. We're on lap 19. Herman is out in front, and I'm not quite sure just what's happened with the game. It's saying they're behind safety car at the moment, but it's saying a lot of drivers have left the session, and I'm not quite sure what's happened here. It would appear VSM Sandman and Herman have both gone into the pits, and I think VSM Sandman, everyone's parking up in the pits, so I'm not quite sure just what's going on at the moment. And yeah, there's not enough players remaining for this session, so it would appear that the game has crashed, and I'm not quite sure where we go from here. So I'll find out what's going to happen, and I'll be back to let you know in just a moment.